Today in the Brick Lab, we're going to be taking a look at a shrunken fusion dragon. So this design was inspired in part by the larger fusion dragon, and also a comment I got last week asking me to design a miniature fusion dragon that everyone else could build. Well, this is what I came up with. So the mini fusion dragon does use a lot of parts that are also found in the big fusion dragon set, like these dark azure or dark azure, however you pronounce that. But to be honest, there are really no specialty pieces, and if you have a decent sized collection, you should have most of these parts. If not, you can always order them from Bricklink or Brick Owl or whatever, or just substitute them for parts of another color. For example, this dark azure you could probably replace with a regular blue, and no one would be able to tell the difference. Well, don't quote me on that. They could probably tell. Anyway, moving on to the main design. So, to be honest, this was actually a fairly easy build. All I had to do was take the parts from the larger dragon and just shrink them down. For example, with the tail, all I had to do was shorten that a few lengths and then maybe thin it out a little bit by taking off those extra black 1x2 plates. And of course, as you can see here, we have Nia's colors on one side and Kai's on the other, exactly like two dragons that have been fused together. So moving on to the legs, I basically just kept the legs as the same proportions they have in the larger fusion dragon, although I did shorten the front legs in relation to the back ones so that they don't have the same gangly, awkward proportions that they do in the larger fusion dragon. If you have that set, believe me, you know what I'm talking about. So the wings were actually did take a little bit of trial and error to get the right shape I wanted, the same shape that they have in the larger fusion dragon set, that little V there with the wings spreading out. Getting the right length was tricky, but in the end it turned out alright. So designing the heads took a little bit of work too, but once I realized that I could use the design from Cole's Dragon from last year, they actually kind of clicked into place. I just modified that design slightly, and then duplicated it in blue, and there we go, heads for the fusion dragon. To me, this doesn't look entirely complete, and one thing I like to do is just add in some white studs here to give the dragon some teeth. And to me that adds like a nice little touch of charm and goofiness. But if you'd prefer your dragon not to have teeth, you can always just leave those off. So now let's move on to my favorite part. Even though the mini fusion dragon is pretty tiny, it can still comfortably hold both Nia and Kai. And unlike the fusion dragon, they can actually sit side by side, so it looks like Kai is controlling the fire half of the dragon and Nia is controlling the water half. I'm not sure how that works in the actual fusion dragon, but to me, I think that idea is pretty cool. And of course, just because they're sitting there, it doesn't really impede the movement of the wings that much. I mean, you won't be able to lift the wings all the way up, but then again, why would you want to? You have both Kai and Nia riding the dragon. That makes up for it, in my opinion. Anyway, that wraps up our brief overview of the miniature fusion dragon. If you enjoyed this little mock video, please feel free to comment, like, share, subscribe. Do whatever it is you feel like doing. If you didn't like it, feel free to tell me what I'm doing wrong and how I could do it better. In the meantime, stay tuned because the tutorial will be coming next week. I hope. No, it will be.